Hey everyone, Kevin here with JcrOffroad. Today in the garage we're going to be installing our Crusader rock sliders for both 2- and 4-door Broncos. Now out here I have all the main components of the slider itself. However, first you're going to see us install the mounting legs on our red Bronco here at the shop, as well as a blue 2-door, and then we'll get back to assembling and installing these. Alright, so we're going to start here by installing the front leg. Before that can go on, you're going to want to remove the 2 clips right here holding this wire harness to the frame, along with one that's going to need to be pushed up holding this section down to the body mount. Alright, so you'll start by grabbing this front mount. You can slide it up in place, and this basically butts up tight to the bottom of the frame. This flange will butt tight to this front body mount, and that'll help you identify which mounting hole you're going to use first right here. You can then pull this out of the way, and you'll need to clearance this out to 7/16 and then thread in one of the 1/2-inch thread cutting bolts. Now these thread cutting bolts, you'll just need a 3/4 socket, and then they can be ran in using an impact. Now once you get the threads cut in there, go ahead and back that out, and then we can put the bracket up in place and use that to hold it loosely. So now with your bracket held in place on this front bolt, you're going to need to mark these 4 hole locations. Then come back and drill these 3 to 7/16 to accept these 1/2-inch thread cutting bolts, and the front hole will get opened up to accept a standard 1/2-inch hex bolt all the way through. Now this can be reinstalled on that front bolt. Then go ahead and grab the 1/2-inch bolt with a washer, slide it through this front hole. And then you can install a 1/2-inch serrated flange nut onto that. With those in place, you can go in and install these 3 thread cutting bolts. Once you have all those started, grab a 3/4 socket, and you can run all these tight, and then you'll have to grab a wrench to finish this one up in the front. Then this rear wire harness clip can be reinstalled to the frame along with the front body mount clip. After that, you can move to installing the rear bracket. So moving back here to the rear, you're going to need to remove this rearmost clip in the wire harness to get that out of the way. Then your bracket can be slid up here in place. This 90 flange will be towards the front of the bracket. You're going to be lining it up with these two large openings here in the frame. And then you'll pass your 4.5 inch long, 1/2 inch bolt with a washer all the way through. On the back side, you'll be using this square washer along with a serrated flange nut to hold this bracket in place. And then I just want to point out here on the driver's side, we're going to be using the forwardmost hole here at the top of the bracket. On the passenger side, you'll use this center mounting hole. So once those are in place, you're going to want to push this bracket up tight to the frame. Make sure it's centered the best you can in these two openings. And then you'll snug these two bolts up for now. So then we can install the slider boat to the mounting brackets. And then the last thing we do will be to come back and drill and tap this bottom mounting hole. The reason we're going to wait and do that is so that if we need to make any minor adjustments in the location of this back leg, we still have that ability all the way up until the end. So the only real difference in this rear slider leg here on the passenger side, you'll line it up similarly with these two holes on the frame, and then you will have one factory mounting hole here in the bottom that you can thread the supplied M12 bolt through with a washer. Now, if yours is equipped with a factory gas tank skid, or you're going to be installing our aftermarket skid, you're going to need to make sure that this gets installed between that fuel tank skid and the frame. Also, if you have that factory skid, you'll already have a bolt here that can be reused. All right, now on the two-door passenger side rear mounting leg, you're going to need to locate it using the rear mounting hole here on this bottom flange. That will correlate with this tank skid mounting location. Once you bolt that up in place between the skid and the frame, if yours is equipped with a fuel tank skid already. So once it's mounted in place with the bottom bolt, you'll need to mark and drill these two holes to 7/16 so that they can accept two more of those 1/2 inch thread cutting bolts. The reason this side's going to mount just a little bit differently is because here on the two-door, you do not have the room between the fuel tank and the frame to get the nuts and the backer plates up in there. So here on the cart we have our main slider assembly, a lower skid, our step tray, as well as our outer step tread plate. And then in the back here I've got some hardware as well as the rock lights that need to be installed before this can go on the vehicle. So first things first, I'll set the step tray and tread plate off to the side and we can work on assembling the slider here. So we're going to take the lower skid and kind of just drop the slider right into it. You've got 4 mounting holes along the front, 4 along the back. You're going to be using those to install the black 5/16 button heads along with black 5/16 washers. And on the inside or back side of those, you'll install 5/16 serrated flange nuts. So you can just slide this as needed to line those up and begin installing your hardware. Now ideally, you'll get all 8 of those bolts started kind of just loosely by hand. That should make that step the easiest, and then you can come back and tighten them up with your 3/16 hex. Now after that, you're gonna have two different sizes of clip nuts that need to be installed. The larger 5/16 are gonna go down along the tabs in the bottom of your slider, leaving the smaller M6 to go along the back edge here. So you should have 5 of these. They all kind of install the same way by just slipping them on over the hole, kind of pressing them on, and you should hear somewhat of an audible click when they snap into place. Now up next, you'll be installing the rock lights out into each end of the slider. For those, we provide you with black number 8 screws as well as nylock nuts to go along with them and fasten them in place. Take a look at your light and see if it has a blue protective coating over the lens. If so, go ahead and peel that off before you get these bolted in, and we'll kind of reposition here and show you how to get these installed. So in this orientation, you do have a nice open window on what will be the back side of the slider when installed on the vehicle. So I'm just going to put the nut on the back side of the light here and line it up with the hole. I can slide that in here and then start a bolt from the outside. And we'll do the same thing on the lower hole down here. When it comes to tightening your hardware, you'll need a 3/32 hex and 11/32 wrench or socket for the inside. And then you do just want to kind of alternate back and forth, making sure that you get the light sitting nice and flat on the inside of this face. So just use a little bit of caution here when tightening them up. Don't over tighten them and potentially crack the lens on the light. That's why you have the nylock fasteners there. And then you can repeat this process over on the other side. At this point, you can get your 1/2-inch hex head hardware ready, and we can bolt this onto the legs that you should already have on your vehicle. Now in our case, I'm doing this on a vehicle lift, so I'm gonna grab our transmission jack to support this thing while we bolt it into place. If you're doing this on the ground, in your driveway, in your garage, whatever the case may be, you can use a floor jack or even just a couple jack stands to kind of achieve the same thing. Now with your slider up alongside your mounting brackets, you're gonna be installing 4 of those 1/2-inch hex head bolts at each mounting location. The bolts will run from the inside out like so with the washer installed on there, and then the nuts will have to go in kind of on the inside of your slider boat here. Now for the top 2, you will have to kind of feed that in under the lip there and get it lined up and then get that bolt started. Now something that works pretty well for me is just starting 1 bolt on each end so we have the thing up kind of nice and level on the vehicle, and then just finishing up with installing the remaining hardware before adjusting this front to rear and tightening anything up. Once you get the slider kind of level and up on both mounts, it becomes a little easier to get your remaining hardware installed. From there, again, you just have to adjust it properly front to rear, which is just visually up to you. We kind of set ours up so it's nice and centered on the rocker panel sheet metal here on the vehicle, and then you'll need a 3/4 inch wrench to tighten things up. Now, you'll be turning the bolt on the back side. You may have to reach inside of the slider here and just hold the nuts temporarily, but those serrated nuts should bite into the slider material and hold while you tighten these. Worst case scenario, you'll just need a second 3/4 wrench to kind of hold those in there. With the slider tight, you can then grab your step plate. Now this, you will need to kind of feed one end down into the opening on the end of your slider and then slide it back, sort of centering it up using the mounting hole locations. With the step plate in and roughly lined up, you can then grab your logo tread plate. This will kind of sit down over the outside with this radius flange hanging over. So you can slide that in, and with it lined up, you'll need a couple more of those black 5/16 bolts to get started into those bottom 5/16 clip nuts. With your bottom 5/16 hardware started but still loose, you can then grab the M6 button heads to go in the back. So these are smaller button head hardware. You've got washers and bolts that go in here, and you'll need a 4mm hex to kind of drive these and tighten these. Once you have both sets of hardware in, just started loosely, you can start tightening things up. Just note that the bottom on the tread plate does have a little bit of slotted adjustment in it, so make sure you're pressing all the way in tight on that as you're tightening those bottom bolts. Now with all your hardware tight over here, you just need to repeat those steps over on the other side to kind of fully complete your installation. And from there, you just need to wire in your rock lights or slider lights to complete and finish out this install. Now for most of you, your Bronco may be equipped with factory accessory or upfitter switches, and that's going to give you a great place to tie into to power these lights, and they give you all the information needed in the factory owner's manual to wire into that platform. Those of you that aren't using that, maybe using a secondary switch controller, in that case, follow your manufacturer's instructions there to get these things wired up and operating. Now, aside from that, this installation is complete. So as always, if you guys have any questions at all about this product or anything else we offer here at JCR Off-Road, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. You can always send us an email at info@jcroffroad.com or call us at 269-353-1184.